So I guess let's just kick off with why APEX, what's changing in the market, why customers, end customers are now interested in CapEx, OPEX-based purchases rather than CapEx-based purchases.
Sure, Mark. So I think one of the key trends that we've certainly noticed and we're observing right now is that customers are really trying to get the benefits that they get from that hyperscale public cloud environment, but really apply it to what they do in their own premise and their own environments. And part of that is actually around how they consume it and wanting to consume those resources in an as-a-service fashion or on a consumption model, so they're paying for what they use and when they use it, rather than that traditional old CapEx way, which is here's your kind of quotes and then please can I have a big PO for that. As we've seen in the market at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty around things like inflation, cost of energy, and because of that, a lot of businesses and organisations are looking to try and preserve their capital. And solutions like APEX and consumption models like that are a great way of helping those organisations do that, reserve their liquidity, but also at the same time get the resources that they need to run their business.
And it's really been the cloud that's changing things. Pre-cloud, going back 10, 15 years, everybody was just CapExing, buying everything outright. The cloud has shown companies that they don't have to do it that way, so more and more are want to doing it in the cloud.
Absolutely. Customers love the way that they can consume the technology versus, again, having to outright purchase it. It gives them a lot of flexibility.
Why are customers not just going cloud? Why do we need on-prem APEX?
There's a number of factors why that's the case. I think you can look at things like security and data governance being one. So customers need to have that particular piece of infrastructure located in a secure or on-premise environment. Sometimes it's about actually what they're paying. So it can be actually about the price point for the service they're trying to consume. And what often we do see is actually there's a lot of great benefits to public cloud, but at the same time that comes at a premium for a lot of customers as well. So what we're trying to do with APEX really is bridge that gap between the experience that customers get in that public cloud environment and bring that down to what we do in the on-premise environment. So allow them to consume things more as a service and less as a product, if that makes sense.
And certainly what I'm hearing is that the difference in cost between the cloud, doing it in the public cloud versus doing it on-prem is only getting greater, and that's one of the drivers very much.
Absolutely, and we do see some customers now actually really evaluating their spend and looking where they best place their workloads. So public cloud is brilliant for some workloads, it's not so great for others, and that goes the same for on-premise.
So, but the customers, I guess, have got used to the cloud way of doing things. If they've decided they need to come back on-prem because of cost reasons, then APEX is an ideal way to go, because they get many of the benefits of both.
It's a great way for them to do it.
And what about the partner? So what's the opportunity for the partner around APEX?
Great question. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the partner around APEX. In itself, APEX, we're delivering an infrastructure solution to a customer site typically. Now, of course, that still needs to be deployed, it still needs to be installed. There's a whole raft of services that partners have the opportunity to add themselves in terms of how they manage that environment for their customer. And of course, there's the actual, from a partner perspective, there's the rebates and incentives that we offer from a Dell perspective that make it really attractive for them to invest. And also many partners are still trying to get their heads around, I think, annuity business. This is a great way for them to get on board with a safe pair of hands in Dell. We help de-risk that whole process for them and give them that route into market, which maybe they haven't had before.
And what about growth? Because I guess that's the key thing, is what parts of the market are growing, what aren't. So obviously if you're a partner and you focus exclusively on CapEx, maybe you're going to get left behind.
We did some research over the last couple of years, and we looked at kind of the way the market is developing between 2023 and 2026. And what we saw was the analysis kind of really said two things. One, which the infrastructure market is still going to be really important, and by that I mean the on-premise infrastructure market, but it's not going to grow at the same rate as the rest of the market. In fact, it's going to remain fairly flat, whereas the public cloud spend in the same period is going to increase. But in between that, there's kind of this layer in between, which we call private infrastructure as a service. This is really where we focus with APEX. What we're trying to do is bring those models from the public cloud down into that on-premise environment. And this is the fastest growing part of that market by far, which is a great reason for us to invest in it and a great reason for the partners as well.
If partners are not promoting this, then they're going to be missing out, because the end customer is going to want this kind of service.
Absolutely, and another great thing that partners really should focus on is the stickiness of annuity type sales as well. So an annuity business is something that you're constantly in touch with that customer about. It's not something that you've sold them a solution and maybe you go and refresh them in 2.5, 3 years, 4 years time. It's something that you will be constantly involved with that customer with, especially if you're again wrapping those services around, because you're constantly delivering that value to them and you have that maintain that trusted advisor status all through that process,
which is key. So in terms of the APEX offerings, I understand there isn't just one offering. There's several offerings to provide maximum flexibility for the partner and for the customer. Can you explain that?
So APEX is kind of, first off, is our brand name for anything that we would call multi-cloud or as a service right now. Up until very recently, most of the focus of that was on what we call modern consumption, which is probably what we're going to talk most about today. But we also now have a great focus on delivering a modern cloud experience. And by that, it's also extending what we do today in the on-premise infrastructure into the public cloud as well. But if I come back to the kind of the as a service or the consumption base, there's two key offers that we have there. The first one we call APEX Cloud Services, which are more about delivering a technology outcome. So in that instance, Dell effectively curates the solution. We design what's under the hood. We can add services around it, or the partner can deliver that, or the customer in some circumstances.
So it's very analogous to the way you would consume cloud services.
Absolutely. So realistically, a customer has three choices to make in that environment. In the example of storage, they choose how much capacity they want, what performance they need, out of one or two, two or three options, and then what term they need to consume it over. It's that simple.
And they don't decide on the product behind it?
No, they don't. No, they just decide whether they need, for example, block storage or file storage. It's really simple.
And potentially the product behind it could change.
Absolutely, but at the moment, obviously, it's based on all of our market leading, I would say, best of breed Dell Technologies infrastructure products. So that's customers should be absolutely reassured by that anyway.
But the customer doesn't need to worry about the detail of the product and
100%.
How RAID groups are configured and all sorts of other complexities.
No, all that complexity is completely gone.
Exactly. So really, it's very much like you were getting if you purchased AWS or Azure or services, anything along those lines. Okay, so that's cloud services. What's the other option?
So the other option we have is what we call APEX Custom. So in this instance, we're actually subscribing to a product. So a slightly different approach, but quite closely aligns to customers who are very involved in their own solution design, or partners who are very involved in the solution design and really helping design and tailor a solution much more specifically to a customer's needs. The outcome-based services or cloud services are based more on a kind of a t-shirt type approach. So you're going to size for, a general kind of workload, although it's increasing all the time, I should say, the use cases. So don't necessarily take too much stock in that right now. But APEX Custom is truly that. It allows us to tailor a solution specific to that customer's needs.
So it's a bit more flexible.
Yeah, very flexible. The key offer that we have is called Flex on Demand, hence the flexibility. And that allows us to effectively build a consumption model based on a bespoke solution that's been designed just for that customer.
So a partner can design exactly as they're doing today for an on-prem CapEx solution. They can take exactly the same build and apply it to Flex on Demand.
100%.
And presumably that's something we want to see partners doing, is actually proposing both CapEx and a Flex on Demand.
Well, speaking selfishly, I'd love them to position APEX first and foremost, but I think, absolutely. I think sometimes there's a little bit of trepidation with that, because whenever you compare a CapEx to an OPEX-like solution, and I have to say OPEX-like because APEX aligns to an OPEX model. However, individual companies have different accounting practices, and they may term it OPEX, they may term it CapEx, but it aligns to that kind of model.
So for the people that are new to APEX, and we're talking about CapEx and OPEX, I guess we should explore that in a bit more detail. So and I'll give my limited understanding of it, and I know we've talked about this before, and you correct me when I talk about this stuff. So CapEx is fairly straightforward. You're sort of buying it outright, and let's not complicate things by involving banks and loans and things like that. Let's say that the customer is buying the solution outright, and it's theirs, and
that's correct.
And at the end of the maintenance period, and when they want to get rid of the equipment, they kind of decide what they're going to do with it, and they could run it for as long or as they want to. So once we move into APEX and OPEX, so this is, and I know I said this to you the other day, this is like sort of like leasing a car, whereby you're paying monthly, and most importantly, at the end of the agreement, you don't own the equipment. The equipment is still owned by
it's a Dell asset.
That's the key difference when we're talking about APEX, whether it's cloud services or the Flex on Demand offering.
Yeah, it's not a bad analogy, and I often use that myself when I talk to partners, and they say, well, quite often when they've done a CapEx versus an OpEx or an APEX type solution comparison, they'll say, well, how come that costs more to do it on a consumption model? I wonder if they ask the same question when they buy a car. Because I know you could go and pay cash for a car for, say, 30,000, but if you want to do the same thing on a PCP or a lease, it's going to be like 38,000 you're going to pay over the life cycle, for example. And that's just an example, but obviously from a Dell perspective, we take on some risk. We add some additional things in there, like a customer success manager on our cloud service offers, so that obviously is a value add to the customer and the partner as well. So it's sometimes a little bit dangerous, I think, to do a direct CapEx to OpEx comparison, but it will happen naturally. So they would literally choose, do I want block or file or data protection storage first off? Then they would choose how much capacity do I want to consume? And then really they'd choose one of kind of three performance levels that they can choose from, and the term. And the term can be from 12 months up to 60 months.
So the procurement process becomes so much simpler, so much quicker.
That's the idea, absolutely. So it's really to make it much more like a cloud-like experience where they would go on a marketplace, select what they want, and then kind of press the buy button.
And what about the ongoing management? I understand that they can have a Dell managed solution or a customer managed solution.
That's right. So there's two options effectively that we offer. We have Dell managed and we have customer managed, which can also be partner managed. Now, Dell managed we only offer on some of our data storage services right now, so it's not available on the whole portfolio. The rest is customer managed. In that instance, where it is Dell managed, we have things like deployment, we have support, we have decommissioning, which is really important as part of our sustainability guarantees. But also it includes additional things like monitoring, optimization of the environment, and service review, and that's all wrapped together with a customer success manager as well. If we look at customer managed by a comparison, that doesn't include any of the management or the optimization piece, but at the same time then that creates a great opportunity for a partner to jump in and actually provide that service and their own managed service wrapper to the APEX solution.
So once again, it's all about choice, which for me is so important.
Indeed,
no, absolutely. Okay, so let's dig into the services in a bit more detail. So we've talked a lot about storage. We know there's storage services available. That would go without saying from Dell. What other services are available beyond storage?
Yeah, absolutely. So in simple terms, if it's in our ISG portfolio, we can typically build a service around it. And that's in a flexible and consumption manner in terms of the APEX custom offer. If you're looking at the cloud services, it's a little bit narrower, but we have solutions for storage in terms of block, file, and data protection. We also have HCI. We have a couple of HCI offerings based nominally on our VxRail platform, but around private cloud and a hybrid cloud for VMware environment. And we also have compute as well. So if customers are looking to do bare metal as a service, they want to consume effectively their compute resources in an as a service fashion, that's a great offer for them as well.
So are there any key technology areas that are maybe missing today but we might see in the future?
So right now, obviously there's offers that are available elsewhere in the globe, so particularly in North America, that aren't yet available in the UK. So things like high performance computing, or also things like cyber recovery, which isn't a pre-built service right now. But there are things like networking aren't necessarily included right now, but we are looking to fix that by the end of the year, so we can incorporate our networking portfolio alongside our storage, HCI, and compute portfolio.
So it's ever evolving, as you would
absolutely
as you would expect. Is APEX right for customers of all scale, i.e. small customers, mid-sized customers, enterprise, or is there a kind of minimum starting point for it?
I would say yes, but there are obviously starting points for it. So if you look, for example, at our APEX custom offers, typically we're starting around an opportunity size of around about 100,000. Yeah, so it's not
That's dollars or
it's
pounds?
Dollars we kind of use, so around roughly, what's that, 85k pounds, isn't it? Yeah, that's where we start. However, the typical sale that we see around that is probably nearer 250, something like that. But it does start that low, and we can absolutely build offers and solutions around that. For the storage offers, actually it varies by the offer. So for the block storage, that is, whereas data protection storage, that can be around 25 terabytes, and file storage is a bit bigger, more like 200. but that's because it's based on a scale out environment, and it's based on our PowerScale platform. So.
Okay. And the billing to me is key. I think when I first found out about APEX many months ago, you sort of think, okay, so this is all very interesting, and we've got this monthly billing, and you pay for usage. Can we dig into that in a bit more detail? How does that fundamentally work? I know there's terms like committed capacity, buffer capacity. Can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll come on to those terms because they're quite important. So when we talk about committed capacity, that's basically what the customer has said they want to consume right there and then. And with our cloud services, that's usually a fixed amount. So we have no variability in that. So what they say they want, we provide them, and we do provide an additional overhead on top of that for them to consume on an elastic, on-demand basis.
Okay.
And we call that the buffer. With Flex on Demand, we can vary the two things. So it's fixed on those cloud service offers, but on Flex on Demand, we can actually vary where we put that commitment level and where we put the buffer. And there's many reasons why we might do that. The classic example would be, well, I've got a certain amount of capacity I know I need right now, and throughout the year, I might use, say, 50% utilization of my environment. However, for 10% of the year, I might use maybe 85% of the environment. But I always need that 85% there, effectively. So this just gives the customer a great way of controlling and managing their costs, first and foremost, and also just paying for what they use when they use it.
Okay, so every month they'll pay for the committed capacity that's fixed, and there's an agreed rate for that. And then maybe this is a Christmas sort of scenario where they peak, but so for 11 months of the year they are paying that flat rate.
Absolutely.
And then 1 month of the year they'll pay an additional amount as they go into that buffer. And is that at the same rate, or is that an additional higher rate?
They pay for what they use when they use it. When they finish using it, they don't pay for it anymore. So it's not like you turn it on and it's permanently on. It goes on and off, and it's absolutely at the same rate that they're paying for their committed capacity.
Okay.
So there's no premium rate, like when you go on holiday and you get a nasty shock when you get your phone bill.
And if a customer sees that they started off at a committed rate of 50%, but they're averaging 70%, can they increase the committed amount, and will that save them any money by doing that?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's true of our Flex on Demand products. Definitely, we can absolutely do that.
So mid-contract, you could review your committed capacity and increase that. Obviously, for the customer's best interest.
Yeah, we'd work with the partner, work with the customer to understand what they need to do, where they need to go, and effectively we contract with them for what the new solution looks like.
Okay, great. And you mentioned that magic figure of 85%. I know there's this term, buffer cap. That's right.
Yeah, or billing cap, buffer cap. Yeah.
So again, explain that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, sure. So. And this is true of storage in particular, not so much of compute and HCI. So let's just make sure we're clear on that. Typically, by design, you don't want to fill a storage system above kind of 85%, because when you do, you're going to run into management performance challenges, that kind of thing, and it's not ideal. And that's always the point when you're working with a customer. If they're getting close to that, you start talking to them about actually expansion or upgrade. They're the two things, and it's exactly the same here. But the key thing is here we don't charge the customer for the pleasure of that.
So they can dip into it
if they really want to.
We don't want them to, but
we don't want them to.
But they're not
suggest they don't. But they don't get charged if they do.
Interesting.
And even if it might be just for a spike of an hour or something like that.
So everyone's going to do that. Yeah.
If we start to see that pattern trending upwards, and with the cloud services, the customer success manager is really important here. They will be monitoring that to ensure that actually how are they using it and how are they consuming the solution, and actually what point does it look like that they need to actually think about expanding or upgrading.
Okay, so it's very easy to increase your committed capacity. The obvious question, can you decrease the committed capacity?
Not during the term of the contract is the key thing. So the key thing there is we can do that at the end of the original committed term, but not during mid-term. To be honest, consumption generally only goes one way, generally only goes up, but there are sometimes scenarios where it may go down. Now, if we know a customer does need to actually decrease their commit over a time, we can factor that in a number of ways. First, we can do it on, for example, a short-term contract effectively, so maybe set up as a 1 year versus a 5 year. The downside is that they will have to pay more effectively on a per unit basis versus a 5 year. But the benefit they get is the flexibility to then decrease their commitment at the end of that 1 year term. Or we can also do it through things like Flex on Demand. We see this commonly where a customer may be migrating to a new platform, or need a new platform temporarily to allow them to bridge the gap between what they do on premise and the hyperscaler, and they gradually need to decrease that commit. So things like, again, with the Flex on Demand, we could start off with a low commit, and they effectively would consume that on demand buffer, and then it just naturally would fall away as they go through the life cycle until they reach that low commit that we agreed with.
Again, start. Flexibility is what it's all about.
There's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way, I would say. And our teams, our APEX acceleration team and our DFS team, are fantastic at helping work with our customers and partners and explaining this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the key thing is for partners just to understand the basic mechanics of this. You've just got to get your heads around cloud services, Flex on Demand, those different offerings, the buffer capacity, the committed capacity, the caps, and so on. And just once you've got your head around that, which is not too difficult, it actually is an extremely flexible solution. And certainly that's the journey I've been on as I've been working with you on this.
I'd just say there's a lot of options. I think if the answer is generally, if you can design a solution, can it be an APEX solution? The answer is generally yes. There are some exceptions, but the answer generally is yes.
But I think there just is that little bit of upfront investment that we all need to do as a distributor, as a partner, the end customer, just to understand the mechanics of this. And once you've done that, it's a fantastic solution.
and it's important, like as we talked right at the start around how the market's evolving. Customers are getting more and more fluent in this language. They want to see the options around consumption versus what they've done traditionally, and I think if partners can converse in that language and increase their own skills and capabilities around it will stand them in good stead and help them differentiate.
I agree. Obviously, one of the really powerful benefits of the public cloud is the ability to spin things up very quickly and shut things down. Now, of course, with this buffer capacity, that gives you the ability to spin up extra capacity and then shut it down again effectively. What about, though, in the first place? What about if you I need a new storage solution. If I do it in the cloud, I can get it up and running very, very quickly.
That's true.
Traditionally, in the CapEx world, you might spend 6 months doing that. How does APEX help us with that?
So we offer a time to value commitment of around 28 days for most of our cloud service offers. By that, what we mean it's from the time the customer effectively presses go to the time they're available to run workloads on. So they can actually start running their workloads, running their applications from when they press go effectively. So we say 28 days is a stake in the ground that we put. At the moment, we're ahead of that in the UK. I've seen the latest figures, but we don't want to give the game away, but we are beating that. And people might say, well, actually, that's very different to what you get from the cloud. Yeah, absolutely, that's right. Certainly for that initial deployment, that's correct. However, what it does give customers, especially given the circumstances of the last 2 to 3 years with supply chain challenges, is that peace of mind in terms of supply and demand. So Dell's supply chain is one of its greatest strengths, one of its biggest assets, and certainly I know some of our competitors had some great issues with lead times in the last couple of years.
You're talking months, aren't you?
Yeah, months and years in some instances. So,
yes, it's crazy.
And we rode that out pretty well from a Dell standpoint, which was great. And the strength of our supply chain really allows us to then offer that out to our customers.
But it's also comparable to a CapEx solution. I think 28 days is extremely short, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually what we find is that, when actually a customer decides to go ahead, a lot of the time they don't necessarily want it in 28 days. They're not ready for it. They haven't got their data center commissioning in place. They may not have their network provisioned or the other resources that they need to integrate available. So actually 28 days is a good starting point, but typically most customers aren't necessarily ready for that. But it's really good that we can do that velocity for customers who do.
Excellent. So going back to partners, obviously there are partners out there of Dell that have got very strong professional services offerings, and they do everything upfront, planning, deployment, support, and everything else. And then there's other partners who have none of that and obviously want to lean on Dell or distribution to do all that heavy lifting for them. How does APEX map onto those two different scenarios?
I'd say exceedingly well. The great thing is that because our APEX offers are based on the Dell Technologies products that we kind of know and love, and the channel knows and loves, has been selling really, really well for us the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of them have already invested in those deployment capabilities for those technologies. So if they've already invested in that deployment certification, for example, on a VxRail or a PowerStore, we can reuse that in an APEX environment. Absolutely. There's literally an hour and a quarter of on-demand training that they need to complete, which is effectively a bit about APEX and a bit about how they leverage the metering software, etc. And that is it.
So APEX is not going to impact their services revenue at all.
And actually also the key thing there is, as I mentioned, we talked about Dell managed and customer managed at the start. I think the key thing there is that, as I said, partners can also offer those services themselves where there isn't a Dell managed offer, or actually for those Dell managed offers there's also customer managed for the same offer as well.
Okay, and for partners obviously who don't have services offerings and aren't particularly technically skilled, this is brilliant because it's going to make the whole pre-sale side of it very easily, because it's very simple to sell, and obviously the post-sales can be taken care of by Dell themselves.
Correct, yeah. So it aligns to both partners who are really technically proficient and who've invested heavily with us in terms of their services and skills, and also partners who are more sales oriented and don't necessarily have that services skill base to call on.
And again, going back to the devil's in the detail and my journey understanding APEX, and you think about the billing, does the billing go through the partner, or does the billing go through Dell? How does the mechanics of the billing actually
effectively
work?
It flows down. So from our perspective, we would bill to you guys first and foremost as our primary contracted partner. You would then bill down to your partner, your tier 2 partner, and then that partner would then bill to the end customer.
And that would apply to the committed capacity and the usage based capacity as well. So
all the way down.
Excellent. I think when I first looked at it, I sort of assumed it was all billed through Dell and that it would be dealt with by rebates and things like that. But no, it's not. It's effectively billed the same way that a CapEx based solution would be, except it's just done on a monthly basis rather than a one-off. Excellent. So, in terms of, because obviously getting into the nitty-gritty of money and margins and so on, is there anything else partner needs to know about margins, rebates, referrals and so on?
So we've got a number of routes to market that we offer for channel partners. So the key ones that are probably important to them is we have a referral model where the partner doesn't necessarily want to get involved in the detail of contracts and legal. But we also have the resale model, which is the one that we're really trying to drive. So up until recently, referral was the main motion in the UK, and that's simply because we didn't have resale available. Now we do. We absolutely are incentivizing our partners to go down that route. So we offer some very attractive rebates. It varies by the tier of partner.
But I think there, compared to client and server and storage, I think the APEX rebates are the biggest of the bunch, aren't they?
I believe they are, yes, right now, And of course the partner is free to make what front-end margin they wish as well. So that's a key thing to bear in mind as well.
Okay, excellent. And again, digging into the detail of how this works, so you might have an APEX contract for 3 years or 5 years, rebates, referrals, all things like that. Are they calculated on, say, just the first 12 months of the deal or the entire deal?
So typically what we do is based on what we call the committed contract value. So if we say that contract is worth, let's say 300k over 3 years, so that's the rebate will be a percentage of that.
Right. Excellent.
And
that's really good.
The way we do it is we pay that 30 days post deployment.
How would you recommend that they sort of get up to speed with all this stuff? Because I know I've been on this journey. I've had access to you on a weekly basis, and we've worked very hard, I think, to build a nice little slide deck and so on to take out to partners. But how would you recommend partners get up to speed with this?
I would say first off, engage with yourselves. I know you're doing a lot of hard work around creating programs for your partners. Obviously, I'm available. There's a wider APEX acceleration team available. But the key thing is, I would say, is get educated. We run a number of events. We've just done some great events recently. We did Power to Partners, which is more of a sales-oriented event, and we also did Heroes, which is more for the technical community.
I was there.
Indeed, and they're great events because they really give our partners access to our kind of subject matter experts, but also what's relevant and what's now. And it's not just about what looks nice. It's a case of this is the reality of it as well.
And I think what Exertis is trying to do is to work with people like yourselves and take all the messaging that comes out with Dell and as best we can to simplify that, to take that out to the partners and make it relevant to their customer base and their markets, and that's something I'm certainly laser focused on.
And the only other thing I would ask partners to ask is, when they're having their initial conversations with their customer, a very simple question, which is, how do you want to consume this? And that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Is it CapEx or
yeah, and do you want to buy it outright, or do you want to get it on a consumption model that's flexible and gives you some degree of elasticity? There's
and I think
some great things to talk about.
Absolutely critical. Partners start doing that now, because if they're not doing it, it's going to probably push the customer more to the cloud or more to other vendors who are providing a variation on this kind of service. So thank you very much for coming down from Manchester.
Thank you for having me.
No,
it's been great.
Fantastic. And just to wrap up, did you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do. So obviously I've answered a lot of questions
You've done
from
very
yourself.
well.
So my question is, why would a partner want to work with Exertis around APEX, for example?
Yeah, I think what we're doing at the moment is very much focusing on empowering partners. We're very aware Dell has a very substantial portfolio. It's applicable to all aspects of the market, small businesses, medium-sized business, a lot of enterprise focus, and we're really trying to filter through that and take out empowerment materials, training materials, messaging for the partners that we're focusing on. And they are typically going to be partners that are focusing in the lower end of the market and the mid-market. We very much see that APEX is relevant to that mid-market, and partners need to know about it. They need to get into the detail of what it's about, and often these partners don't have the time. I've spent a lot of time, if I probably totted it up, I spent a day or two at least studying APEX, reading up on APEX, talking to you about APEX. So we're taking all that and then we're passing that material onto our customers and our partners and so forth.
Great.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I'm going to lie down now.
I'll just have a nap on the way home. No.
Hopefully you found value in our podcast today. If you have, please stay tuned, and we can have lots more content looking at Dell Technologies and how Dell and Exertis can help you.